Hello and welcome. As you can tell by the title, I'm the Obsessed Movie Man. Oh no. And as you can see, I'm dressed because I'm going to be talking about Godzilla! The new sequel to Godzilla is coming out soon that is uncreatively called Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I thought this would give me an opportunity to talk about my top 10 favorite Godzilla enemies/foes. The only criteria to this list is that Godzilla himself cannot be on it. Are you ready? Let's go!
At number 10, we have a monster that, while not being really in the Godzilla franchise all too much, certainly had gained my attention due to how bizarre I found him. Baragon. Now, Baragon didn't originate in a Godzilla film, but instead he first appeared in the film Frankenstein Conquers the World. After that, he made a small cameo in Godzilla Destroy All Monsters, but where I best know about him was in one of my personal favorite Godzilla films, Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters, All Out Attack. So why do I like Baragon? It might be his weird design, which at least to me looks like some kind of lizard, rhino, elephant hybrid, which I think is pretty cool. It could also be that he's in GMK, or it's also because I have fun playing as him in Godzilla Save the Earth. Even though they gave him the power to breathe fire, which he hasn't shown before, I can't really explain why I like Baragon. Simply put, I just find the fact that he's an odd monster that hasn't got much screen time, and yet is in one of the more popular Godzilla films, GMK, to be interesting to me. In fact, I think a lot of Godzilla fans may have first been introduced to him there. I'd love for him to come back in some film, even if it is a very slim chance.
All I can say is, it's frickin' Baragon, man!
For number 9, some might think that this is cheating a little bit, and a lot of you might be wondering why in Godzilla's name am I adding Minio or Manila or whatever you want to call him. Well, it's because Son of Godzilla was not only the Godzilla film I watched the most as a kid, but a lot of my family did as well. I don't know if we watched it because it was funny or so stupid that it was funny, but man, I vividly remember watching this film and everyone in the room laughing when this thing either did something stupid or something stupid happened to him. It's probably just sentimental nostalgia on my part, but I really did have fun watching Minya in Son of Godzilla, which is both funny and sometimes even emotional. I guarantee you that I was not the only one moved by that film's ending. Even the creators of Final Wars have a soft spot for him, evidently, just for the fact that he's even in that film. Though I do admit, I really hated this guy in what is obviously the worst Godzilla film, Godzilla's Revenge, where not only can he shrink to the size of a human, but can also talk, which is something I never wish to hear again.
Just thinking about it makes me want to move on. Next!
For number 8, some might be upset that he's not higher on the list, but I'm putting Gigan near the bottom. He looks very cool, kind of like some robot dinosaur bird, but I don't find him all that special aside from his design, especially in Final Wars. So why is he higher up on the list than Baragon and Minya? Well, he's more recognizable, has been in more games, and while Minya has appeared in more movies, I think Gigan is a bigger threat than both of the latter monsters. For Godzilla's sake, he causes Godzilla to bleed, something that rarely happens in the movies. I don't hate Gigan though. In fact, I grew to like him more in both Final Wars and the games, and even though he's not higher on the list, I think he's at least worthy enough to be on the list. Some monsters have only shown up once in the Godzilla series, and the one we're talking about for the 7th place is Orga. I've already talked a lot about him in my review for Godzilla 2000, so check that out. But I think his design and powers are pretty cool, though I wish there was more of him. Like I've stated before, it's cool that he's a creature who's actively trying to become Godzilla by absorbing his DNA, and even trying to swallow Godzilla whole, which leads to probably one of the coolest monster deaths put in this franchise. It would be cool to see him again in a film, but I think, like Baragon, he'll only be appearing in games and comics for now. Continuing the trend of monsters that show up only once in a Godzilla film, none is probably more infamous than Destroya, the monster created from the very device that killed the first Godzilla. It's cool he has multiple forms and can create a bunch of copies of himself, and he might be the monster that was closest, at least in the Heisei series, to kill Godzilla.
I will say that this monster did give me nightmares. Oh, not of the movie. I mean, when I used to play Godzilla Destroy All Monsters on Nintendo GameCube, he was difficult as all hell!
It's kind of fitting that the Heisei Godzilla's last opponent in that series was not only something that looked like the devil, but was created by the Oxygen Destroyer. It was like it was bringing it back to how it began.
Or I guess it goes back to how it all ended, as Godzilla was originally destroyed by the Oxygen Destroyer, and Destoroyah kind of, sort of let's move on.
So for number 5, a lot of people might be surprised I put him up so high on the list, especially when he is very similar to Baragon.
But what can I say? I love our Lord and Savior, Baragon.
But I'll be serious. Number 5 would have to go to Anguirus, or Angoris, or Anguillus, or whatever name they gave him. Very similar to Minya in that regard. But why put him up in the top 5? Honestly, it's mostly because he was the first monster Godzilla fought. This was how the whole Godzilla vs. monster movies got started. He didn't even show up again, or at least another version of him, until Destroy All Monsters. And when that happened, he seemed to become an ally to Godzilla. He never showed up in the Heisei series, but got some good screen time in Final Wars, and showed that this hedgehog dino thing could cause serious damage.
Ha! Who's the best hedgehog now, Sonic?
Now, for 4. We have a monster who had one standalone film until he was plucked out and was placed in the Godzilla series forever. Rodan. Okay, so it's not one of the same 2 Rodans from the film Rodan, but I guess that movie could be considered canon with the Godzilla franchise.
Especially when you consider monster number 2, but we'll get to that later.
So Rodan is basically a giant pterodactyl-like monster who is basically the first ally of Godzilla, well, after they fight each other, as tends to happen in this series. Him flying alone can cause serious damage, and in the Heisei series, he even gained a similar ability to Godzilla's radioactive breath. He's been both an ally and foe, but despite that, he's both one of the more popular and recognizable monsters, and his appearance in the new Godzilla film will make him even more recognized to us pesky Americans who can't watch any Godzilla film without dubbing the entire film.
Next!
When it comes to Mechagodzilla, there are a few options to choose from, as the character has 3 different iterations in the films. But the one I loved the most was the evil version created by the aliens who happened to be apes. When we first see him, he's disguising himself as the real Godzilla and goes on a rampage in Japan. After fighting the real Big G, Mechagodzilla reveals himself and shows just how equipped he is, with toe and finger missiles, the ability to fly, create shields, and various other things. I mean, he flat out almost kills both Anguirus and Godzilla in their first encounter. And even when he faces off against 2 monsters, such as Godzilla and King Caesar, he's initially successful at fending them both off. After his first defeat, he'd show up again, and with the aid of a weird monster called Titanosaurus, although it was the last time Mechagodzilla was portrayed as a villain. And honestly, I think it's cooler with him as a bad guy. Even though the human-made versions are cool, such as Kiryu, or whatever it's called, I think the idea of an evil robot version of Godzilla sounds even cooler. I don't think Legendary Pictures will go the route of any version of Mechagodzilla, but even so, at least he still exists in films, comics, and games. The second monster that I love in this franchise is yet another one that started out in her own film, Mothra.
And I just realized that as soon as this new movie comes out and everyone sees Mothra, those stupid moth memes will be coming back!
But anyway, Mothra has appeared in multiple Godzilla films and even had some more films of her own. Even though it doesn't seem like she can do much in both her larva and final stages, she can stand her own fairly well against Godzilla and other monsters. She even has 2 fairies, which is really weird. Another reason why I love Mothra is that her first appearance in a Godzilla film was the second Godzilla film I saw as a kid, and one of the ones I watched the most. And even though she was under mind control in Destroy All Monsters, I love that she is usually depicted as a good monster who is willing to defend humanity. So before we unveil who the number one monster is,
which I'm totally sure no one is gonna guess, so here's some runners-up.
we have Ebera, Hedera, Gabara, Jeff Goldblum, and Megagyrus.
Nah, I'm just messing with you. Yes, the number one Godzilla monster is indeed King Ghidorah.
Even with this character's first appearance, I think it was easy to tell that this asshole was going to be Godzilla's main enemy, especially since it not only escaped in its first film, it took Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan to cause it to retreat. This damn thing just kept on coming back, seemingly working on either its own or under the control of the various different aliens or evil humans. The creature's origins change quite a lot in the series, which genuinely happens to many monsters, but probably not as much as this one. It's worked for aliens in the Showa series, was created by evil future Americans, and has even been presented, at least once, as a good guy in GMK. And Ghidorah has a very cool reveal as the last monster Godzilla has to fight in Final Wars. It's pretty safe to assume that Ghidorah is Godzilla's main antagonist in all the series, making me not only very excited to see how it will be portrayed in the new Godzilla film, but also makes me proud to say that, aside from Godzilla, King Ghidorah is my favorite monster in the series.
Nah, I'm just kidding once again. It's obviously Jet Jaguar. Hope you enjoyed the video.
Jet Jaguar, Jet Jaguar, Jaguar.
Okay, now that that's over, I need to start working on the Grinch review. It's gonna be such a great movie. I remember the last time there was a Grinch movie with Jim Carrey that didn't treat the source right, but hey, this new one should be good, right? Oh, Tag Movie Reviews just posted their review of The Grinch. Let's go see it.
Now watching this, I could definitely appreciate the live action one a lot more now.
I feel like my heart is shrinking. It's becoming two sizes too small.